You're listening to the Military Working Mom Podcast with Drea Jones, episode 41, Deployment Challenges with Family, featuring Nicole Alexander. This episode is brought to you by The Breastfeeding Shop, your one-stop shop as a TRICARE member for all breast pump and pump accessories. The Breastfeeding Shop really differs from everybody else because they do the work for you, and they honestly have the most variety of pumps available. So know that when you're looking at stores and you only see maybe 3-4 pumps, that's not what TRICARE covers. That's just what that company sells. So shop around, but I tell you what, the Breastfeeding Shop has the most variety. So check them out today, thebreastfeedingshop.com, to get your pumps, supplies, and accessories all under TRICARE.
All right, ladies, so today we are here with Major Nicole Alexander of the U.S. Army to hear her experience from multiple deployments in a dual military relationship with 2 kids. And we know how tough that can be. So thank you so much for being here, Nicole.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
You know, we've talked before, and you have quite a bit of experience deployed, and 2 of those, your 7 deployments, you got 2 with kiddos. So
Right.
What's your story? What was the difference between them?
Yeah, so I've been in the Army for going on 16 years now, and in June it'll be 16 years. And so as I said, you know, I've done 7 deployments, so 2 to Iraq, 2 to Afghanistan, 1 to Turkey, and then my last 2 were in Germany. And you know, so my first 5, no kids. I was married for one of them. Actually, my husband and I were deployed together on one of them as well, which was also very interesting. We spent our first year anniversary there. And then we started having kids together. And so I knew, so after our first deployment, or our first child, my husband deployed overseas at 6 months. And then I PCS'd our little family to California. And so that was kind of an interesting experience all in itself, you know, with the brand new baby and on my own. And then when I was at the end of my time in California at Naval Postgraduate School, got pregnant again. And probably, I don't know, a month or so before she was born is when I found out what my next job was going to be. And that's when I learned I was going back to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and I was going to take command of a civil affairs company. And for in civil affairs, we command as majors, so I was older. And obviously I was also having kids older as well at that point. I was a major. And so even before Avery, my youngest, was born, I knew that I was going to take command of company and deploy to Europe. And then I had my baby and Avery, the youngest, and we moved back to North Carolina. And it was really interesting kind of knowing for a long time that I was going to be leaving my kids for such a long time, and that my youngest, she was going to be 5 months old. She was 5 months old when I deployed. So it was very difficult in that you're challenging. Maybe it's kind of the best way. So I wanted to deploy. I wanted to take command of this company. I wanted to get home. Or home is in North Carolina, and start kind of working again. I was not, and I'm not, kind of one of those moms that was really anxious to go back to work, to leave my kids. I was actually happy to kind of go back and get off of maternity leave and do all that. But, you know, obviously I'm still a mom, and I still am nervous about what that's going to mean for the relationship with my kids afterwards. With my first daughter, I had pumped. Breastfeeding wasn't great for us, so I pumped for a whole year. And then, but knowing I'm going to leave my second daughter at 5 months, you know, that was a lot of breast milk that she wasn't going to get. And so I actually started pumping again immediately and storing it and freezing it. And by the time I deployed, my husband had about 3 months worth of frozen breast milk in the freezer to still give her when I was gone, which was kind of interesting. So I also, interestingly enough, kind of knew this was the great thing about our unit, is that I knew I was probably going to get 2 deployments. And so planning that far out and talking that far out with my husband about it was kind of interesting and in a way, I think, very good, because we weren't in the know. We weren't questioning what was going to happen. We kind of knew that, okay, this is going to be 6 months long. This is where I'm going. I'll be home for a year, and then I'm going back again. In that sense, I think it was good mentally for us to be able to prepare that sense.
When you prepare that long, does it almost seem like it drags out though?
A little bit. Like it's never gonna end. And honestly, I think a little bit with my husband, it was like, this is never gonna end, and I'm gonna have to do this again. And these are still very young kids, so I definitely didn't envy him. Honestly, like, I feel really bad. I would not have wanted to be in his position. I would have been really mad at at him if he was deploying and had to be left with a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old. So while I hate that he gets mad and probably a little bit of resentment, I totally get it, because none of us would want to be in that position, right? Nobody wants to be separated. So yeah.
And how long was your deployment?
Both of these two with having kids was 6 months long.
Okay.
Well, actually, my last one got cut a month short, so 5 months.
Okay. Yeah, I know my husband's deploying. I'm like, man, you're leaving me with the kids, but I'm the one with the boobs and everything. So I can't even imagine a husband with you being gone, being like, oh my God, like,
yeah,
they need a lot more love.
Yes. Yep, they do. And my oldest one and I were very close, always from the beginning. Like, she and I were buddies. And so it was really hard for her, and I knew it was going to be. And so during the deployment, I mean, she takes it out in a, maybe, I don't know if it's different, but her way of kind of being upset about it is she just doesn't want to talk to me. That's how she handles it, because it makes her sadder. It makes her more upset. My husband would always say, after we were on the phone for the next like 45 minutes or so, she was just angry and mad and sad all at the same time. And so that was how she handled it. So that made it pretty difficult for my husband to deal with. And then for me, knowing that this is, well, we're not going to get to talk, right? And then I have an infant who can't talk. So really, what are we doing every day? So it made it kind of interesting.
How did that make you feel? And then how did your husband handle that?
Yeah. I don't, we didn't really talk much about how he handled it, honestly. And I should have asked him, sorry. So I think that, he tried to talk to them a lot. We did talk every day. He would send me videos and I would send them videos. So we came across an app called Marco Polo, just before my first deployment with having them. And it's a video app. And so you can send videos and receive videos, and it stores them. So, I mean, I still look at videos from 2 years ago or 3 years ago. So we sent a lot of that, and that helped because of the time difference. So in the mornings are really hard at home, right, for any household. And so if I called them in the morning, then I'm really interrupting, especially then if my oldest, she gets all upset, like it gets super disruptive. But then if I called them at night, right after my husband picked them up from daycare, it's like midnight my time. So that's kind of sucks for me as well. So we didn't have a set time, because some days like I was awake and some days I wasn't. And so we kind of use the videos to go back and forth, or to help it kind of intermediary with that.
No, that's awesome. I've never heard of that app. So
yeah,
I'll go down in the books.
It's awesome. Marco Polo. We love it. Also use it with my friends. But it's been great. And it's great now for like my grandparent or their grandparents, my parents. So one thing that we did do kind of prepping for the deployments, I'm kind of the financial person of the household. So I put everything on, automatic bill pay. I put my husband's name on everything, because that was something we hadn't done before. So that if I couldn't handle it from Europe, then he would be able to do it. We planned for times when my parents would come. They'd been helping us out a lot since my daughters were born anyways. So they would come for weeks at a time, and try and plan out, like, with my husband how to travel or not. So we kind of had that in the works, but obviously everything wasn't handled or wasn't covered. There was a lot of stressful times for my husband. And so, yeah, and I think probably a little bit of resentment, honestly, that my husband is kind of carried towards me a little bit. And so that makes it a little bit difficult for integration. And it's just one of those things that I think we kind of have to deal with in a dual military relationship or dual professional relationship, really, is whose profession is going to have to surge at which point, right? Or whose is more important or more demanding at certain points. And my husband's older than me. He's been in longer. And so he had been used to doing all these deployments, and he was the one leaving his family behind. and it was only whatever he was doing, and now it was my turn. And so I think that was a little bit difficult, or has been. And we've talked a little bit about it, an hour into a fight, it comes out. But so it's, and it's hard to handle for sure. And I don't know if Mike and I have handled it the best way, honestly. And our integrations have been really difficult, sometimes, or reintegration. So I don't know if I'm the best one to give tips on that, but just that.
Also, honestly, not everyone always does reintegrate, and that's why divorces happen and separations.
Yep.
So how bad was your reintegration, if you don't mind sharing, or what actually happened?
Yeah. So with my husband, we end up fighting for like 6 months. I mean, it's rough. It is rough in our household. It's not, we haven't done counseling. I want to, it's just not agreed upon that we're going to. And so it gets pretty rough for a while. I think for this last deployment, January was like a huge breakthrough. I don't really know, frankly, what happened. It just all of a sudden was amazing, and we were back to being like a great relationship. It's not like we had a blowout fight and then we worked it out or anything. It just kind of happened. I think between the two deployments, it almost took like 9-10 months, and then I was deploying again 2 months later. So it was pretty rough. We are very explosive people, I would say. And we're both type A's. I was a commander, so I had my command, hat on probably more than I needed to when I was home. And so it didn't really go well. It wasn't like, it wasn't horrible. It wasn't great though. So
was it more, so if you mind sharing details, I know me and my husband, for instance, we more take jabs like, oh, well, I stay up this late at night and you don't do this. And was it more like, hey, I've done this for 6 months and you haven't been there? So
oh yeah, we got a lot of that. Yeah, we got into that a lot. And he would it was like my 6-month deployment was a year. He's like, you were gone for 9 months. I'm like, no, I was literally gone for 179 days. So there's that. And then, I was still a commander, so I couldn't always get home on time. But I did, in my mind, I was thinking, well, I'm making up for it by taking the girls to school and picking them up most days out of the week. Well, I owed that to him in that sense. So those were a lot of what our fights were about. Who was doing the most work, right? When we had this morning, I was like, well, I just did 4 loads of laundry and put them away. What are you doing this morning? So, a little bit of one-upsmanship. So
we all do that. Don't worry.
That's kind of what we do in our household.
Yeah. We've just learned to identify that was a nice jab. Thank you, honey.
Yeah.
I see what you did there.
Yeah. I think reintegration with my kids was different, was easier. My oldest, no problem. She was probably clinging to me for the first, 30, 45 days, which I think is probably normal, and a little rough for me, right? Because I just spent 6 months by myself doing my own thing. I was living in a city, it was great, honestly. And so to come back to having, while I wanted to obviously be with my kids and all that, it was a little rough for me mentally a little bit. So with my older daughter, both times, no problem. My younger daughter, when I came back after that first deployment, she was we celebrated her 1-year birthday, maybe 2 or 3 weeks after I came back. And it was much harder with her. It took, I would say, almost that full year again to really make it feel like she would choose me instead of her dad, instead of my husband. And in a sense, I get it. 6 months to 12 months is a really important time frame in a kid's life. And so, whoever is the adult there is going to be the one that you're used to growing up to. And so that was pretty hard for me to kind of take in, or to understand that she wanted to choose somebody other than me. So that was really pulling at my heartstrings for a long time. But we got there and I deployed again. And luckily after this last deployment though, I think it was fine. I didn't ever feel I didn't have that same feeling again, right? Like it was evenly split love between the two of us. I think even now she chooses me more than dad. So yeah, so I think after, like I said, after this last deployment, it was fine with my other daughters, and reintegration with the kids have been pretty easy, fair, considering.
Yeah. So now you were just saying that you prepped the family. Now, how did you prep? Did you prep to say like, hey, you're coming home in this many days, or just prep them, like explain that you're about to deploy?
Yeah. So we talked about deployment with the kids, that I was going to be overseas for a long time, that I was going to Germany. The first deployment was a little bit, the youngest one had no idea what we were talking about. Obviously, she's 5 months old. The older one kind of understood it, but didn't understand the concept of time either. So we would just talk to them about it. We got a few books that just talked about traveling and being away, not necessarily about deployments though. And then in the second go around, and then coming home, when I was coming home, again, we just said, hey, we'll be home soon. We talked in the matter of sleeps. So we say we'll be home in 10 sleeps or 5 sleeps, something like that. And then when it came to the next deployment, I could tell my older daughter, hey, remember last time when I was gone in Europe for that long time, I'm going to be going there again. And so she kind of remembered. And then when it came to coming home this last deployment, we actually started a calendar where we marked off days on each day. And I think my husband gave them a chocolate as well when they did it. And I think they started about 30 days until I came home, because they were starting to get a little anxious. So it was good that I ended up coming home early too, because they were, I think it was a little bit of anxiety, like, hey, we really want mom to come home. And it was starting to get summer. And so yeah, and that we also used kind of events in that timeline now that I think about it. So my first deployment with them, it was June to December. And so we could kind of say right before Christmas, mom's going to come home. And then for this last one, I came back at the end of May. And so again, it was, right before summer. And so we kind of use those events like that.
So you had quite a bit of a story, both with your kids and your spouse. And it's good never to forget that spouse piece, because they go through a lot too.
Right.
And I'm sure he reaped and what he sowed when he deployed the next time, right?
Right.
Now, can we touch on that just a little bit? So now when he deployed, how was it the same, or was it different because now you were home?
So I don't think I held that much resentment when he left. But I'm also lucky in that, so my parents are amazing. I had mentioned them previously. Well, it's a lot easier for them to be with me than it is for them to be with him. So I had a lot of help. And even though I was PCSing across the country with an infant, my parents were there with me. And so I had a lot of help for that 6 months that he was deployed. And it was just one kid at the time. And so, I don't think they left me for more than like 2 weeks at a time. So I had a lot of help, and it wasn't the same with when my husband was gone, right? They came a lot, or they would take the kids, but it just definitely wasn't the same amount of time. We did have a rough reintegration then as well, though. It was still 6 months, I would say, about till we got a handle of ourselves. I think in that sense, there was a lot of emotions or a lot of changes in our life, because when he left, we were still in North Carolina. He had this really set job. And then when he came back to North Carolina. I was in California. And then he had to move to California and start this new job, but that was a totally different thing in a school setting. So I think there was just a lot more emotion in it as well, which is why that time, even though it was just one kid, was pretty difficult.
Yeah, and I see that's pretty common in the Army from what I've been hearing, is moving while the other's deployed.
Yeah.
So it keep you guys together?
Yeah. It kept us together. I mean, he was able to get a job in California. I mean, it was my time to go to school, to ILE, intermediate level education. And so we kind of had to. It was a good opportunity, good deployment opportunity for him to take. And so it made sense. I think I feel very supportive in that, like, if you need to deploy, you need to deploy. I keep telling him, get on a deployment, right? Like, it's time for you to go. It's been, 4 years since he's deployed now. Like, it's time for him to go. I'm trying to get him on one. As much as I don't want to be by myself, I get that drive to want to be a part of something in our jobs. I get it. And I knocked out too in the last, 2 years. And he understands that I need that as well. He's in the special operations community just like me. And so we get it. But it still doesn't negate the fact that it's rough at home. Right.
Yes.
Like,
Which is why we want to escape sometimes.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up, what would you recommend to women going in your shoes, here soon or in the future? And then what do you wish you would have done, or how do you wish reintegration with your husband would have happened?
Yeah. So I think pictures and videos are the best thing to prep yourself for. We took a lot of pictures, a lot of videos. Before this last one, I was really nervous about my kids, their hands and their feet and like their little faces were going to be so much bigger in that 6-month period that, I think like 3 days before the deployment, I called a photographer, was like, can you please do a session with us? And I just wanted to get all these pictures so that I could take them with me and see them. And that was pretty important for me. And especially because my kids were so young, we weren't having conversations on the phone. We weren't doing video calls that lasted an hour. Right. So I only had these other things that I could look at and refer to all the time. So I recommend that especially for young kids to do that. And as far as reintegration, I think I'm a supporter of counseling. People that I know that have done that have done the marriage retreats, things like that have come out stronger on the other end. Anecdotally, I would say I think it probably is helpful. I would not recommend going about it the way that I did it, of just fighting it out for months. It's a method, it's a way, and we aren't. And I don't think we've ever come to the point of divorce, but I think we could have been happier and we could have gotten through that sooner. I think it will be rough to come back from a deployment because your spouse has been dealing with your kids and life at home while you've been out, and whether you're in Afghanistan or Iraq in a combat zone, getting it on, or you're in Europe or Africa or Asia where you do get time to hang out, right? I went to Oktoberfest and my husband was pissed, right? But like, he gets that I need to have a regular life too, but it still doesn't make it fun where I'm out, drinking German beer and he's home feeding my kids. So there's going to be a lot of anxiety and resentment, I think, on both ends too, right? So try to prepare yourself for that and not think that it's going to be all rosy and happy-go-lucky when you get home. Like, just even knowing that will be helpful, whether or not you do the counseling or talk to your friends or read all the books. Just preparing yourself for it, I think, is helpful in itself.
Absolutely. Now, only because I know the Air Force better and that we have, Task Force True North, or the chaplains normally put on reintegration sessions for couples. How does it work in the Army? Where can people reach out to?
Yeah. So our units, and I think the Armies usually do, they call them strong bonds, the chaplains, the marriage retreats as well. They usually get a thing. In our units, at least, we were doing them about a month or two after we got back, but there was really only like 15, 20 slots. And so as the commander, I was like, well, I'll let my soldiers do it first. But there are those opportunities. There's military family life counselors, MIFLICs, I think, are out there. And then obviously One Source, you get 12 free sessions if you call military One Source as well. So a lot of, maybe not a lot, I know multiple people who have used that and been really helpful to do that. And honestly, I did it myself for a couple times. I think I probably used like 10 sessions just myself. So those are good options, I think. And our chaplains are always out there in the Army and available. And then, like I said, the military family life counselors, MIFLICs, are always available as well.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And all the resources and the Marco Polo app will be included in the episode notes for everyone now to use. That sounds amazing. So thank you so much for being on and sharing your story, Nicole.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for the opportunity.
So there was lots of good takeaways from Nicole. Not only the Marco Polo app, which again we will include in the episode notes, but also the reality of how to make sure your family your kids and your spouse really can prep and then reintegrate from deployment. Often we focus on the kids and we forget about the spouse, and they go through a lot as well. So everything that she talked about can be found in the episode notes, found at themilitaryworkingmom.com/episode 041.
Thank you for listening to the Military Working Mom podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please click subscribe and leave a review to help us reach more military moms just like you. And then to save time and receive posts as soon as they come out, join our email list at www.themilitaryworkingmom.com and follow The Military Working Mom on Facebook to join our community of women as we discuss topics, ask questions, and share stories in a safe, judge-free environment. We are here to provide you with answers you need. Don't forget to join us next week as we continue to help you navigate your mom, wife, and military life.